Over the past decade, Wichita State has seen an explosion in popularity due to a handful of successful March Madness runs by their basketball team. Did you know they used to have a football team? This is the story of Wichita State football. But before we get into this, if you enjoy college football content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Also, let me know which school you want me to cover in future videos in the comment section below. Wichita State's first ever football game came back in 1897 when they were known as the Fairmont Wheat Shockers. They competed against Wichita High School on Garfield's Gridiron in front of over 1,000 fans, winning the game 12-4 under head coach T.H. Morrison. 1905 would be a historic year for the program as the Coleman Company set up temporary gas-powered lights for a night game against Cooper College, now known as Sterling, which became the first night game played west of the Mississippi River. The Wheat Shockers would win the game 24-0, but the program was not done making history that year. On December 25th, Christmas Day, the Wheat Shockers would take on Washburn in a game that would experiment with a few different rule changes. At the time, football was in a bad place as they were experiencing multiple deaths a year on the gridiron, leading to schools and politicians pulling support for the game and threatening to put an end to the game as a whole. In this 1905 matchup, they tested out the first down marker, giving teams 4 attempts to get to the first down and the forward pass. The game was viewed as a failure by many as the game ended in a 0-0 tie, and there was not much excitement that happened in the game. According to the New York Times, the two teams had played each other 6 weeks earlier, where Washburn had won the game 11-6 in a much more exciting game. In the previous matchup, under the old rules, Washburn had achieved 14 first downs, while the Wheat Shockers achieved 4 first downs. In the experimental game, only 7 first downs were achieved between the two teams. There were no serious injuries in the game though, which was seen as a positive sign. The New York Times article wrote, "The 10-yard rule does away with the roughness in scrimmages, but hard tackles in the open field caused all the bruises to the players in the game." Dr. John Outland, an All-American tackle in 1899, spoke on the game saying, "It seems to me that the distance required in 3 downs would almost eliminate touchdowns, except through fakes or flukes. Of course, the two teams would have to be evenly matched as Fairmont and Washburn. I believe one team would have to be 24 points stronger than the other team, or they would score a touchdown by straight football." In the game, Washburn completed 3 passes while Fairmont completed 2. Both rule changes would be passed later on, saving the game of football in the United States. Wichita State football would play as an independent until 1923 when they joined the Kansas Collegiate Athletic Conference for the 1924 season. They would join the Central Intercollegiate Conference in 1928, where they would go on to win the conference outright 5 times and a share of the conference once in 1931 in their 11 seasons as a member of the conference, before returning to independent status for the 1940 season. 1942 saw the arrival of Ralph Graham, who would lead the Shockers to their first bowl game and the first bowl game for a team in the state of Kansas in 1947 when they played in the Raisin Bowl. Following the season, Graham would leave to take the Kansas State head coaching job, leaving the Shockers program with a 17-13 overall record in 3 seasons, taking 3 years off from running the program to participate in World War II. He finished his career with the 5th most wins as a coach for Wichita State. Jim Trimble would replace Graham and led Wichita State to the Camellia Bowl in 1948, where they lost to Hardin-Simons 49-12. In 3 seasons, Trimble would lead Wichita to a 13-14-3 record. Wichita State would join the Missouri Valley Conference in 1945, when it consisted of members like Tulsa and Oklahoma State. Jack Mitchell would take over as head coach in 1953 and led the Shockers to their first ever Missouri Valley Conference title in 1954 when they finished the year 9-1. Following the season, he would leave to take the Arkansas job, finishing with a 13-5-1 record. Pete Tillman would replace Mitchell in 1955, leading them to their 2nd straight conference title in 1955 with a 7-2-1 record before a 4-6 season led to his departure to Washington in 1956. Wichita State returned to relevancy in 1960 when Hank Foldberg led the Shockers to back-to-back Missouri Conference titles and a 16-5 record in 2 years, which resulted in the 3rd bowl game appearance, the Sun Bowl, in 1961. The Sun Bowl appearance would be their last bowl game in school history. Following the 1961 season, Foldberg would leave Wichita State to take the Texas A&M head coaching job. Marcelino Huerte would replace Foldberg and led them to their last Missouri Valley Conference title in 1963 with a 7-2 record and finished with a 14-15 record in 3 seasons. On October 2nd, 1970, a devastation would rock the Wichita State football program. On a flight from Wichita to Logan, Utah, the team would take 2 Martin 404s, which needed to stop in Denver for refueling. They took off at 9:08 a.m. and landed in Denver at a little after 11 a.m. At 12:30 p.m., they would take off from Denver. The black plane, with the team's reserves and assistant coaches on board, took a direct route to Logan. The gold plane's first officer, Ronald Skipper, had a different idea. Skipper was the president of Gold Eagle Aviation and wanted to entertain his passengers, which consisted of boosters and college administrators, along with the starters, team trainers, and head coach. He wanted to provide an in-flight tour of the Rockies and the Continental Divide, which was considered the scenic route. They had flown the overloaded plane straight into a box canyon, hemmed in on both sides and unable to turn around. They were unable to climb the 14,000 feet over the mountain, quickly approaching, and the plane would crash, killing 31 of the 41 people on board. The pilots, flight attendants, school administrators, boosters, and the young football players all lost their lives. 14 of those killed were starters on Wichita State's football team, including Mallory Kimmel, who was just named the starting center and also had just learned he was going to be a father. Within a week, the freshman recruits who had stayed back in Kansas, the second stringers who flew directly to Logan on the black plane, and those who had survived the crash on the gold plane voted to continue playing football, which became known as the second season, when the tragedy would become a rallying cry for the school. On the night of October 24th, some 40,000 people filled War Memorial Stadium in Little Rock as Wichita State's substitutes and undersized first-year players took the field to take on number 9 Arkansas, who was still in contention for a national title. They would lose the game 62-0, but the game impacted many as the players showed up on crutches post-crash to support their team. Both Wichita State and Utah State had memorial services for those who lost their lives. The team would finish 0-9 to finish the year, but battled tough against Tulsa and Louisville, almost pulling out wins in those games. In 1979, Willie Jeffries would be named one of the school's last head coaches after a successful stint where he led the HBCU South Carolina State to 6 straight winning seasons and 2 black national titles. He became the first African-American head coach of a Division I-A football program at a predominantly white school, and is the only man to coach against Eddie Robinson of Grambling State and Bear Bryant of Alabama. Wichita State would continue to struggle, but hope around the program began when they finished the year 8-3 in 1982. They would beat Kansas 13-10 in their first matchup in 36 years. During that same season, though, Wichita State was placed on probation following the season and basically given the death penalty, not being able to play any televised games and having scholarships revoked due to Jeffries giving a player money to pay for transportation to go home, while an assistant gave a prospective student a one-way transportation between his home and Wichita State to take part in preseason practice. Very minor things that were going on in the 1980s when it came to the world of college football. But the school had multiple violations among other sports that led to the hammer coming down on Wichita State. On December 3rd, 1986, it was announced that Wichita State would be ending their football program. The reason behind this was because the football program was bleeding money. The Missouri Valley Conference had fallen apart, and the school had endured 30 losing seasons since 1945. President Warren Armstrong said that the financial picture discouraging conversations with Wichita State supporters, and a consultant's report mandated by the National Collegiate Athletic Association that said there is no other alternative but to drop football at Wichita State, convinced him to act. Since the ending of the program, there has been hope the school may bring back football. There were multiple studies done throughout the 90s to see what the cost would be to revive the program, with one study claiming Cessna Stadium would need $24 million in renovations to bring it back up to Division I-A standards, and another study a few years later claimed it would take $11 million to reinstate the football program, and the 3 women's sports needed to comply with Title IX. In 1998, an advisory committee at Wichita State recommended reinstating the football program at Wichita State after a 15-month study for $70,000. In 2006, Wichita's mayor, Carlos Mayans, proposed to use public funds to restart the football program at Wichita State. He would subsequently drop the plan weeks later. In 2012, there was an attempt to launch a club team, though there was no endorsement by the university. When they joined the American in 2017, they were the only school that did not field a football team. President John Bardo gauged interest over the past few years as well. In 2016, Athletic Director Darren Boatwright told the media, "There's always interest in discussing this topic in our community. Ancillary benefit of having a big fall sport on a college campus are very large. We just need to find out if it's a real possibility and if it makes sense from a financial standpoint, as well as if it makes sense for our community. Right now, it's too early to say that." But hopes of bringing football back may have been dashed with the demolition of Cessna Stadium in 2023. When the stadium was demolished, parts of the Memorial 70 ceremony for those that were affected by the devastating plane crash were given pieces of the stadium, which was something special. But since the launch of Team Builder in College Football 25, according to KSN, popularity for the football team has been reinvigorated with many downloading the created school in the video game. Could this prove to be the turning point for the return of Shockers football? Only time will tell. What do you think? Should Wichita State bring back football? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out one of my other videos YouTube thinks you will love right here. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to embrace the grind.